A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Business Today, your weekly business show on Channel I. And this is where we give you an in-depth look at today's business landscape. And we do have our business personality of the week with us in the studios. Well, today on Business Today, we will be talking about Consumer Affairs Authority and its role, and also a lot about current affairs and what's going on in the country right now in connection to what the Consumer Affairs Authority has to play a role in as well. So before we move on to the discussion, let's have a look at who our personality this week is. Mr. Thushan Gunawardena is an Executive Director at the Consumer Affairs Authority of Sri Lanka. Thushan is an expert in AI facial recognition-based law enforcement technology, marketer and business administrator. He has held senior positions in organizations such as American International Group and Ionix in Tokyo, Japan. Well, today on Business Today, we are honored to have you here with us, Mr. Thushan Gunawardena. A very good evening to you.
Thank you, Shari, for inviting me for this program.
Welcome to the program. And today, as I mentioned previously, we will be talking a lot about the Consumer Affairs Authority and its role and about the current issues which is going on with regards to the gas crisis as well. With that, I would like to touch on you a little bit, Mr. Gunawardena. And at the introduction, we did mention that you are an AI facial recognition based law enforcement technology and you've been attached to this. So tell us a bit about what exactly this is.
Well, I was working for a company based in Japan. Initially, I started off in Sri Lanka, but I was moved to Europe to look after sales and marketing for this. It's a technologically advanced artificial facial recognition system. So I was based in Europe. The technology is widely used for surveillance plus for law enforcement and to actually recognize criminals. It is also used for marketing purposes, where you can recognize the age, the gender, so on and so forth. So
it gets creepier with time, yes, I think, with technology's improvement.
It gives intelligence beyond a footfall. That's how we look at it. I mean, we can say, example would be, we will know how many people walked into a supermarket. I mean, there are systems to calculate the footfall, but with facial recognition, you can actually say 100,000 people walked in, 60,000 were males, 40,000 were females, this was their age, this is whether they were happy, whether they were angry, all that. So it's a wealth of information for marketers to actually predict and analyze the customers.
And as I mentioned, you are an expert in AI facial recognition based law enforcement, and you've been attached to various other fields as well, insurance, and you've played a role in different other organizations, multinationals and abroad as well.
Yes.
So Mr. Thushan, now you are the Executive Director of the Consumer Affairs Authority of Sri Lanka. Tell us your role at the CAA.
Well, I'm basically the Executive Director. It's a political appointment. What we do is, as the Consumer Affairs Authority, we are responsible for the consumer's protection. So we are there to safeguard the consumer from hazardous products, services that are being marketed. So, and we are also responsible for price regulation. The government actually to move the government policies if there are price caps where essential items are regulated. Example is gas, rice. We have gazettes, various gazettes that govern the entire market. So we enforce price regulation in the market, and we also get involved in conflict resolution, where when consumers are when the consumer has got into situations where they are not offered the right service, the warranties are not offered, when consumers are tricked into buying things, we get involved. And we have successfully, in the last 1 year, we have been successfully resolving most of the cases where warranties, various aspects where the companies were involved in manipulating the market. So, and the latest area that we get involved is online selling, because with COVID you will realize that there's a lot of online sales. So we had various problems where consumers had issues. The order they placed never turned up, or what they ordered was not what they got. So Consumer Affairs Authority can intervene at that point. People, we get quite a lot of complaints on various fronts. So that's what we do in short. But of course, there is a gamut of things that we do in the market to regulate. We have staff based in every district. We conduct raids based on information that we receive. So we also look at market, not only price but hoarding of goods, essential items. We intervene and we release that to the consumers, so on and so forth.
There's a lot of things the
Yes.
Consumer Affairs Authority gets involved in, so you did explain them to us in a nutshell. So do you see a lot of Sri Lankans, like you mentioned that there are many complaints, you get a lot of complaints, but do you get complaints from all over the island, or is it just specifically Colombo, or just developed?
Proportionately quite a lot from Colombo, obviously,
Right.
because of the population density. But we do get complaints from various parts for us to get involved, and we resolve it in the district itself. We have our officers in various districts, so we get involved and we resolve. If it is something that needs attention, yes, we intervene and we resolve. If we can't, we will file action against the perpetrators. So it's twofold. We try to resolve it first. If we can't, we then take legal action against them.
How long does this usually take?
Well, unfortunately, between 2015 and 2019, nothing has happened. Where we had almost 700 files just idling. So we managed to finish 420 within this year, with all the problems we've had with COVID and all that. Otherwise, we would have possibly, if COVID wasn't there, we would have finished everything. But now it's more regular, and we try to resolve the complaints that we get as soon as we can. But COVID is a huge problem. We can't bring people into our office to resolve problems. So we have issues where we have a backlog, but we've resolved quite a lot as well.
And how about the country's regulatory framework? Is it working?
Well, it has its problems, but I think regulatory framework is something that has to evolve with time. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka's context, it has not evolved. Our act is...
What do you see as the drawback?
Drawback is that there's no action taken to update the current. We have a very strong act which was done in 2003, but unfortunately that act has not been updated. Example is to suit today's online trading and things like that. So we could do a better job if it is updated, but we are working on an update. Hopefully that should come within this year. We have informed the minister. Minister also has got involved, and we are trying to bring in new features into the act. So, but as far as regulation, you asked the question whether the regulation works in the country. I believe that in an open economy we need to regulate less and monitor more. So unfortunately right now there are we have price caps for everything, but the more we regulate, we know that it doesn't actually move forward, and the price controls don't actually work on the ground. So reality is something different.
Where do you think we're heading to?
We are heading
in terms of the economy?
In terms of the economy, I think we are facing a very tough situation with COVID. I believe that the economy has to roll for it to grow. But right now, I think it's everywhere in the world. Every country is facing this. So I believe we need to keep a close eye as the regulator for most of the products and services that are offered in the country. But we also have to practically find issues in the country to ensure that our regulations work. The greatest threat is that as the regulator, when we regulate, let's say we give a price. If that is not what is happening on ground, that's a big threat. Gas, we ordered them to remove that 18 cylinder, but it didn't happen. So these are threats to the regulator. It's as if the regulator is paralyzed when things don't work on the ground.
How can that be done actually? I mean, is there a way to solve this? Because I think the gas crisis is a topic which is discussed widely.
We've taken action. We've gone to court. But the fact remains that we also have to understand that we need to provide gas at the right price. So we are caught in between the company and the consumer. So we always look at it from the consumer's side, but we also have a responsibility towards the industry to ensure that that the industry does not fall apart. So to that effect, we try to mediate and come to a agreed solution to avoid disruptions to gas. It can be even rice, dal. So we try to look at the cost. I believe that cost reflective pricing is the best way forward. In the absence of that, we need to have mechanisms to protect the consumer. So from us as the Consumer Affairs Authority, we look at it from the consumer's point of view, and we try to get the best solution out with the companies. Now, if you take gas is supplied by 2 companies, so that's more or less a monopoly in the country. So it's rather difficult to walk the fine line.
Exactly, and people also fear that there'll be a scarcity in gas as well. So what do you have to say about that?
I think there's sufficient stocks. It's just that the distribution has been disrupted due to the short-sighted action that was taken by Litrogas, the government gas company, where they reduced the gas in the cylinder and changed the composition. So as a result, people are experiencing regular filling intervals. I mean, previously if the gas company was filling 100,000 cans per day, now they have to fill 150,000 cans. So where's the capacity? Same trucks have to go up and down, right? So I think that decision is what we are facing right now. The crisis is that. So it's a man-made decision. I mean, it's a man-made crisis.
And well, apart from that, I guess with the economic situation of the country, do you think that we can handle this well with the current situation of the country? Because this is a global pandemic.
Yes.
And I think it's not just Sri Lanka, but many countries have been affected in terms of the economy. So you mentioned about some new amendments to the Act. How will this benefit the consumers?
The new changes would force the suppliers to come up with proper solutions to certain issues that are that have plagued the industry. Example is the distribution, the delivery industry, where people order stuff, but example is the delivery cost is very high, right? So we need to intervene. We need to ensure that we protect the consumer plus the manufacturer, because if the intermediary company just for distribution, if they are charging exorbitant amounts, that is of serious concern. So we are looking at regulating that to ensure that a reasonable price is charged for distribution. So as I told before, it's the fine line that we need to look at between the consumer, manufacturer and the distributor. So we are trying to work things out by addressing this. We are talking to distributors, we are talking to manufacturers, we are talking to hoteliers to get information to make the best possible decision that we could. But as I told you before, we want to include the online industry into the act, so that we are very clear in what we do, instead of trying to be ad hoc and trying to do vague things. Looking at the act, we want to ensure that we have the proper sections inserted into the act.
Exactly. Now that you spoke about online, I think we have a lot of independent small-scale entrepreneurs in the country, because with this current situation, many people are doing online business and through delivery, especially homemade food items and stuff like that. So does the Consumer Affairs Authority involve in these kind of complaints as well?
Yes, we do get involved in, if it is trading, we get involved. If there is a complaint, we get involved. We have a dedicated line for that. So if there is a complaint, no matter how small the issue is, we have to get involved and we try to resolve it. Most of it actually don't get to us. If the amounts are high, yes, then people will complain, but I believe that the regulatory framework should act more decisively and address the grievances of the consumer to make it more practical to all parties, instead of only looking at certain areas of regulation. So that's why we believe that bringing in regulation to the existing act, the new updated version will address most of these deficiencies that are currently in the market.
Can anybody lodge a complaint online, or do you have an app per se, or is it still in process?
No, we don't. We are in the dinosaur age when it comes to that, because it's a government institution. I believe that His Excellency the President's vision to digitize these institutions will enhance the service that we offer. But as of now, we have a short number, which is 1977, where people could call and complain, and those complaints will be taken up, and we generally hold inquiries. So I mean, if you take the gas crisis, during that we had thousands and thousands of complaints, but what we did was we are not going to entertain everything, but we knew what the problem was, and that's why we acted on different occasions to take the companies to court. So yes, it's well, the service can always be better.
And that's what you're looking at. I mean, you want
Yes.
to make it better for the consumers, because
Yes.
this is basically the Consumer Affairs Authority, and you are solely focusing on the consumers and for their betterment.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about the food. I mean, people are really worried about the price hikes which might arise or which is already on. So how do you all manage things like this in a situation we are going through right now? Because I don't think it's easy.
Yeah, for Consumer Affairs Authority, the part that we get involved is if an item is included as an essential service or a product, example gas, rice, then that, yes, then there will be a price cap to it. So which means that traders cannot sell it above that price. So you would have seen in the last 1 year we've had various price caps. We had price caps for rice, then we felt that okay, that was not enough, so we had to put a price cap for paddy as well. So this is why I believe that price caps in an open economy does not always work. It gives a little bit of control, but it does not work at the end. So that's why I believe that more and more monitoring has to be done, and policy decisions. This is, we see the tip of the iceberg. There is a big issue right down. So economy has to also move in that direction. So when we regulate few things here and there, it doesn't necessarily work, because there is something underneath that works, which structural changes have to be made. So during the pandemic, I'm not an expert on pandemic, so I will not comment on it, but with what we have seen, I think the government is also moving in the right direction, trying to get the vaccines out there, and trying to get people to come and take the vaccine. I think hopefully if we vaccinate enough people, I'm told that life will come back to normal. So
hopefully,
while hoping that that would be the case, we also have to brace ourselves for the worst case scenario, where the economy, there's that little a government also can do. People also have to understand this. I believe it's everyone's responsibility, not only the government's responsibility. So of course the government has to ensure that the economy is managed well. That is their responsibility, but as Sri Lankans, we need to also pitch in. We have to understand the situation. We need to conserve. I saw the Minister of Energy has come out and said to be careful with your fuel, don't waste it, and because that money can be used for something else.
So, exactly.
So we all have to play our role, play a small part as Sri Lankans.
Yes, I think that's a very good message for everybody out there, because the high authorities are doing the needful, the health authorities are doing the needful so that we can have a safe environment. But at the same time, I think each individual should play their role very well to make sure that we are all safe at the end of the day. That's what's important. So we've come towards the latter part of the program, Mr. Gunawardena. You touched on what the Consumer Affairs Authority does and about the complaints and how people can actually get through to you for various complaints. It doesn't matter what it is, actually you get involved when it comes to an issue for the consumer. So let's just in short explain to the viewers out there how they could do this if they are not aware. They could just call the hotline number, and how fast is this procedure?
Well, it depends on the nature of the complaint, but generally the consumer could call 1977 and make a complaint. There'll be, our officers will attend to it. Generally they'll get a response from the unit. Generally we accept written complaints. Preferably they will provide the email facility, a email address, so that the consumer can write an email. Our emails, our telephone numbers are there in the website. People could reach out, write to us as well, so that we could direct to the relevant area. It's generally fast, but with the COVID situation, our office is, it does not function fully. It's functioning towards maximum of about 20%, because we try to keep to the health guidelines. So we will continue to function during this period. The Consumer Affairs Authority is always there. But I think people also need to know what they're complaining about, what their rights are. As a consumer, what your rights are. I'm sure people who have where the cases that we resolved, people would have realized that they got the benefit, because when there are clear cases like warranties, when the warranty is not provided, people will be surprised that the law actually covers the consumer to a greater extent. We also check in the market for hazardous goods. That includes mobile phones, the 3-pin plugs. The square pin was introduced, and we enforce that. We also adopt certain standards that are prescribed by SLS, where we enforce those standards. You would have recalled recently about the coconut oil issue, where there was aflatoxin in coconut oil, and we've found certain products which we got the manufacturers to recall that immediately, and we've taken immediate action to recall it from the market. So things like that.
Well, we've come towards the end of the program as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Thushan Gunawardena, for enlightening us on what the CAA does, and also for enlightening the viewers on how they could contact you, and about knowing their rules, about knowing their rights as well. So thank you so much once again for being a part of Business Today. Have yourself a great day ahead.
Thank you very much, Sharif. Thank you.
With that, we conclude Business Today. Have yourself a pleasant night.